Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today I'm going to be reviewing a hand I played in a $5,000 buy-in World Series of Poker event this last year. So in this hand, everyone folds to Jonathan Duhamel, who raises to 525 on the button, and I have ace-5 of clubs with a 30,000 chip stack. Well, I guess Duhamel has 25,000, so that is somewhat relevant. And I think both re-raising and calling are fine plays. The hand's certainly too good to fold. If I had a reason to believe Duhamel would fold a lot to a re-raise or call a re-raise and then play poorly after the flop, I think re-raising would be great. But I don't think Jonathan Duhamel is going to make those errors. He's a very great poker player. And so for that reason, I think it's better to have just a somewhat wide-ish calling range when you're fairly deep stacked from the small blind. I think you're better off just completely muddling your ranges and making it difficult for your opponent to have any real idea what you have when you do call. If we were a little bit shorter stacked, I think just stealing the pot would become much more relevant with a 3-bet. But with these relatively deep stacks, the main concern is not stealing this small pot. The main concern is trying to figure out ways to stack your opponents and win big pots. So I elect to call, and then Frank Casella, who doesn't look to be having a good day. He is down to, it looks like, 7,500 chips from a, I believe, 25,000 chip start, decides to call from the big blind. He is a player who likes to see lots of flops. So the flop comes ace of diamonds, 6 of diamonds, 3 of hearts, I have ace 5 of clubs. This is a spot where I think leading is actually not so bad, but I think if I lead, I'm going to have a hard time getting called by many worse hands. I'm going to be getting called by a lot of draws, which are, I'm slightly ahead of them at the moment, but you never really know where you are on the turn, so that's not great. If my opponents have top pair, they're never folding, so leading doesn't seem that attractive to me. So I'm going to check and see what develops. If, for example, Casella bet and Duhamel raised, I would definitely fold. And even if Casella bet and Duhamel called, I would also fold. If Duhamel bets, I'm going to check call most of the time. There's no point in check raising because, again, my opponent's only going to call if he has a good ace or a good draw. So this seems like a pretty good spot to check and check call if Duhamel bets. It goes check, 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 though. So I do not think Duhamel has a very good hand at this point. You think you would bet pretty much all of his aces on the flop and all of his good draws. So I assume I haven't beat. Casella, though, he could have a very wide range, kind of like I have in this spot, but he really should not have that many aces because I have an ace, there's an ace on the board, and he would re-raise some of his best aces. So his aces are somewhat regulated to being poor, if he does have them. Obviously, I guess what I'm saying is not that I'm happy when he has an ace, but I'm saying that he just does not have very many aces in his range, so I'm not so concerned with him having me beat either. So turns an 8 of hearts, putting up a straight draw, backdoor flush draw. So I think I want to go ahead and bet this. I'm betting mainly for value / protection, and also just so I don't check and then have to face a bet out of position. It's not really where you want to be check calling twice on the turn and the river. It's a pretty dicey spot. So I'd be betting here with all of my value hands and all of my draws. And if I'm going to be betting all of my draws, I do want to have a somewhat wide value range. So I've had 1,100. Casella calls. So that makes me think he has some sort of a draw or a top pair. Or maybe even a middle pair. Frank likes to splash around a bit sometimes. The river is a 2. Offsuit 2. So now I have a bluff catcher. I don't think there are many worse hands he can bet for value on the river. But I do think Frank is somewhat prone to bluff if you check to him. So I'm going to check. And he bets 1,800 into the 4,000 chip pot. So this somewhat screams a value hand. But at the same time, I know that Frank is a good player who likes to mix it up. I don't think that you should be really reading too much into what your good opponents are doing because they are smart enough to mix it up on you. And if I know my opponent's smart enough to mix it up on me, I have to really just ask now, what portion of my opponent's range are strong hands better than mine, and what portion of his range contain busted draws? And I don't really know the exact answer to that, but we're getting pretty great pot odds. We need to win roughly 25% of the time to justify a call. And I think here we're probably going to win closer to like 40 or 50 or maybe even more percent of the time because, like I said, we have the ace in our hand. It's kind of hard for him to have an ace. He could easily have something like 6-5 and turn it into a bluff. He might even have the random ace-4. He might have king-8 and be value betting. You know, who knows what's going on. His value betting range might actually be wider than I would value bet in the spot. So I think this is a spot where I pretty much have to look him up. And I do call, and he shows up with ace-4. So that worked out pretty well. He actually has a pretty interesting spot pre-flop where I think he would have been better off 3-betting this particular hand. You're going to find that the bad offsuit aces are not really where you want to be out of position. They make a lot of top pair bad kicker type hands or middle pair top kicker, and both of those are not hands that are easy to play out of position. So I think you would have been better off just re-raising and likely with the idea of folding to a shove. So let's actually rewind this. Let's go back to pre-flop. I'll tell you how I would have played this if I was in Casella's shoes. So once it folds around to Duhamel, he raises to 525, and I call. So at this point, Casella can make it something like 2,200 with the idea of folding if either me or Duhamel goes all in. And we're not going to call him very often. And if we do happen to call, if he thinks our range is somewhat wide, he can shove on pretty much any flop nearly blind and have a pretty good amount of fold equity. So I think that would have been a play that leads to or at least the spots that are better for Frank to navigate. And I think by calling instead, he's going to make a lot of these marginal hands like he did, and he ended up getting punished this time. And I would have played my hand very similarly if it was any ace in this spot, because I don't really think there's a whole lot of value in betting when I think my opponent's range is mostly draws on the river anyway. So this is a spot where Frank was pretty much destined to lose a lot of chips if he did elect to only call. But if he re-raised, I think he would have stole the pot and been much happier. So that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you think. If you would have played this hand the same way, let me know. If you would have done it differently, let me know. I'm interested to hear everyone's opinion. Thank you very much for watching. I will talk to you next time.